rhymes of this great poet. Legacy.
Legacy, 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 legacy.
Yeah.
Legacy, 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 legacy. Legacy, 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 legacy. Black excellence, baby. You gon' let them see.
Who the best MCs? Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas, nah. Nope, the best I ever heard are the Bible quotes. It's a matter of preference, rather your frame of reference. Full of judgment calls, just as a game with refs is. Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, or Abdul-Jabbar. Fadeaways, IQ, shoot too raw. I never mastered skyhooks, though when I read inside books, there was only one that made me take a wise look. Jump shots and pumped rocks are dumb plots. It's short-lived on the top, then the fun stops. What's in our legacy? The scriptures I have read to see. What's the recipe? It sure ain't open sesame. Be a better brother, father, husband, that's the remedy. Verily, that's an Israelite man's right destiny. Black, Spanish, or Cherokee ain't in our heredity. The true Jew identities renewed to heavenly.
Legacy, 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 legacy. Legacy, 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 legacy. Legacy, 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 legacy. Black excellence, baby. You gon' let them see.
All right, test. All right, shalom, family. Most High in Christ bless. Officer Kyle here, IUIC, Virginia, for another 4 chapters a day. All right, we're going to be reading the book of 1 Maccabees. And we're going to start at chapter 8, and we're going to read chapters 8 through 11 today. All right, so sisters, make sure your heads are covered. Brothers, if your head is covered, go ahead and uncover it. We're going to jump right into it, all right? The book of First Maccabees, chapter 8 and verse 1. Now Judas had heard of the fame of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, and such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of amity with all that came unto them, and that they were men of great valor. It was told him also of their wars and noble acts, which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute, and what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of the mines of the silver and gold which is there, and that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them, and the kings also that came against them from the uttermost part of the earth, till they had discomfited them and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. Beside this, how they had discomfited in battle Philip and Persis, king of the Sidonians, with others that lifted up themselves against them, and had overcome them. How also Antiochus, the great king of Asia, came against them in battle, having 120 elephants, with horsemen and chariots, and a very great army, was discomfited by them, and how they took him alive, and covenanted that he and such as reigned after him should pay a great tribute, and give hostages, and that which was agreed upon. In the country of India and Media and Lydia, and of the goodliest countries which they took of him, and gave to Eumenes. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them, and that they, having knowledge thereof, sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them slew many of them, and carried away captives their wives and their children, and spoiled them, and took possession of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to be their servants unto this day. It was told him, beside, how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them. Verse 12. But with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept amity, and that they had conquered kingdoms, both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reigned, and whom again they displace. Finally, that they were greatly exalted. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown, or was clothed in purple, to be magnified thereby. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a senate house, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. In consideration of these things, Judas chose Apollonius, the son of John, the son of Achos, and Jason, the son of Eleazar, and sent them to Rome to make a league of amity and confederacy with them, and to entreat them that they would take the yoke from them, for they saw that the kingdom of the Grecians did oppress Israel with servitude. They went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and said, Judas Maccabeus with his brethren, and the people of the Jews have sent us unto you to make a confederacy and peace with you, and that we might be registered your confederates and friends. So that matter pleased the Romans well. And this is the copy of the epistle which the Senate wrote back again in tables of brass and sent to Jerusalem, that there they might have by them a memorial of peace and confederacy. Good success be to the Romans and to the people of the Jews, by sea and by land forever. The sword also, an enemy, be far from them. If there come first any war upon the Romans, or any of their confederates throughout all their dominion, the people of the Jews shall help them, as the time shall be appointed, with all their heart. Verse 26, neither shall they give anything unto them that make war upon them, or aid them with victuals, weapons, money, or ships, as it hath seemed good unto the Romans, but they shall keep their covenants without taking anything therefore. In the same manner also, if war come first upon the nation of the Jews, the Romans shall help them with all their heart, according as the time shall be appointed them. Neither shall victuals be given to them that take part against them, or weapons, or money, or ships, as it have seemed good to the Romans. But they shall keep their covenants, and that without deceit. According to these articles did the Romans make a covenant with the people of the Jews. Howbeit, if hereafter the one party or the other shall think meet to add or diminish anything, they may do it at their pleasures, and whatsoever they shall add or take away shall be ratified. And as touching the evils that Demetrius doeth to the Jews, we have written unto him, saying, wherefore hast thou made thy yoke heavy upon our friends and confederates the Jews? If therefore they complain any more against thee, we will do them justice, and fight with thee by sea and by land. Chapter 9. Furthermore, when Demetrius heard that Nicanor and his host were slain in the battle, he sent Bacchides and Alchemists into the land of Judea the second time, and with them the chief strength of his hosts, who went forth by the way that leadeth to Galgala, and pitched their tents before Masaloth, which is in Arbela. And after they had won it, they slew much people. Also the first month of the 152nd year, they encamped before Jerusalem, from whence they removed and went to Berea, the 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen. Now Judas had pitched his tent, and Eleazar and 300 chosen men with him, who seeing the multitude of the other army to be so great, were so afraid. Whereupon many conveyed themselves out of the host, insomuch as there abode of them no more but 800 men. When Judas therefore saw that his host slipped away, and that the battle pressed upon him, he was sore troubled in mind, and much distressed, for that he had no time to gather them together. Nevertheless, unto them that remained he said, let us arise and go up against our enemies, if peradventure we may be able to fight with them. But they dehorted him, saying, we shall never be able. Let us now rather save our lives, and hereafter we will return with our brethren and fight against them, for we are but few. Then Judas said, God forbid that I should do this thing and flee away from them. If our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. With that, the host of Bacchides removed of their tent and stood over against them, their horsemen being divided into two troops, and the slingers and archers going before the host. And they that marched in the forward were all mighty men, As for Bacchides, he was in the right wing. So the host drew near on the two parts and sounded their trumpets. They also of Judas side, even they sounded their trumpets also, so that the earth shook at the noise of the armies, and the battle continued from morning till night. Now when Judas perceived that Bacchides and the strength of his army were on the right side, he took with him all the hardy men who discomfited the right wing, and pursued them unto Mount Azotus. But when they of the left wing saw that they of the right wing were discomfited, they followed upon Judas and those that were with him hard at the heels from behind. Whereupon there was a sore battle, insomuch as many were slain on both parts. Judas also was killed, and the remnant fled. Then Jonathan and Simon took Judas their brother, and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers in Modin. Moreover, they bewailed him, and all Israel made great lamentation for him, and mourned many days, saying, How is the valiant man fallen, that delivered Israel? As for the other things concerning Judas and his wars, and the noble acts which he did, and his greatness, they are not written, for they were very many. Verse 23. Now after the death of Judas, the wicked began to put forth their heads in all the coast of Israel. And there arose up all such as wrought iniquity. And in those days also was there a very great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. Then Bacchides chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. And they made inquiry and search for Judas' friends, and brought them unto Bacchides, who took vengeance of them, and used them despitefully. So was there a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. For this cause all Judas' friends came together, and said unto Jonathan, Since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies, and Bacchides, and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now therefore we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight our battles. Upon this Jonathan took the governance upon him at that time, and rose up instead of his brother Judas. But when Bacchides got knowledge thereof, he sought for to slay him. Then Jonathan and Simon his brother, and all that were with him, perceiving that, fled into the wilderness of Theco, and pitched their tents by the water at the pool of Asphar. Which when Bacchides understood, he came near to Jordan with all his host upon the Sabbath day. Now Jonathan had sent his brother John, a captain of the people, to pray his friends, the Nabathites, that they might leave with them their carriage, which was much. But the children of Jambri came out of Medaba and took John and all that he had, and went their way with it. Verse 37. After this came word to Jonathan and Simon his brother, that the children of Jambri made a great marriage, and were bringing the bride from Nadabatha with a great train, as being the daughter of one of the great princes of Canaan. Therefore they remembered John their brother, and went up and hid themselves under the covert of the mountain, where they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, there was much ado and great carriage. And the bridegroom came forth, and his friends and brethren, to meet them with drums and instruments of music and many weapons. Then Jonathan and they that were with him rose up against them from the place where they lay in ambush, and made a slaughter of them in such sort, as many fell down dead. And the remnant fled into the mountain, and they took all their spoils. Thus was the marriage turned into a mourning, and the noise of their melody into lamentation. So when they had avenged fully the blood of their brother, they turned again to the marsh of Jordan. Now when Bacchides heard hereof, he came on the Sabbath day unto the banks of Jordan with a great power. Then Jonathan said to his company, Let us go up now and fight for our lives, for it standeth not with us today, as in time past. For, behold, the battle is before us and behind us, and the water of Jordan on this side and that side. The marsh likewise and wood, neither is there place for us to turn aside. Wherefore, cry ye now unto heaven, that ye may be delivered from the hand of your enemies. With that they joined battle. And Jonathan stretched forth his hand to smite Bacchus, but he turned back from him. Then Jonathan and they that were with him leapt into Jordan, and swam over unto the farthest bank. Howbeit the other passed not over Jordan unto them. So there were slain in Bacchus' side that day about 1,000 men. Afterward returned Bacchus to Jerusalem, and repaired the strong cities in Judea, the fort in Jericho, and Emmaus, and Beth-horon, and Bethel, and Thamnathah, and Pharathoni, and Taphon. These did he strengthen with high walls, with gates, and with bars. Verse 51. And in them he set a garrison, that they might work malice upon Israel. He fortified also the city Bethsura, and Gazara, and the tower, and put forces in them, and provision of victuals. Besides, he took the chief men's sons in the country for hostages, and put them into the tower at Jerusalem to be kept. Moreover, in the 153rd year, in the 2nd month, Alchemists commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. He pulled down also the works of the prophets. And as he began to pull down, even at that time, with Alchemists plagued and his enterprises hindered, for his mouth was stopped, and he was taken with a palsy, so that he could no more speak anything, nor give order concerning his house. So Alchemist died at that time with great torment. Now when Bacchus saw that Alchemist was dead, he returned to the king, whereupon the land of Judea was in rest 2 years. Then all the ungodly men held a council, saying, Behold, Jonathan and his company are at ease, and dwell without care. Now therefore we will bring Bacchus hither, who shall take them all in one night. So they went and consulted with him. Then removed he, and came with a great host, and sent letters privily to his adherents in Judea, that they should take Jonathan and those that were with him. Howbeit they could not, because their counsel was known unto them. Wherefore they took of the men of the country that were authors of that mischief about 50 persons, and slew them. Afterward Jonathan and Simon and they that were with him got them away to Bethbasi, which is in the wilderness, and they repaired the decays thereof and made it strong. Which thing when Bacchus knew, he gathered together all his hosts, and sent word to them that were of Judea. Then went he and laid siege against Bethbasi, and they fought against it a long season, and made engines of war. But Jonathan left his brother Simon in the city, and went forth himself into the country, and with a certain number went he forth. And he smote Adonarchs and his brethren, and the children of Phazaron in their tent. And when he began to smite them, and came up with his forces, Simon and his company went out the city, and burned up the engines of war, and fought against Bacchus, who was discomfited by them, and they afflicted him sore. For his counsel and travail was in vain. Wherefore he was very wroth at the wicked men that gave him counsel to come into the country, insomuch as he slew many of them, and purposed to return into his own country. Whereof, when Jonathan had knowledge, he sent ambassadors unto him, to the end he should make peace with him, and deliver them the prisoners. Which thing he accepted, and did according to his demands, and sware unto him that he would never do him harm all the days of his life. When therefore he had restored unto him the prisoners that he had taken aforetime out of the land of Judea, he returned and went his way into his own land. Neither came he any more into their borders. Thus the sword ceased from Israel, but Jonathan dwelt at Maccabees, and began to govern the people, and he destroyed the ungodly men out of Israel. All right, chapter 10. In the 160th year, Alexander, the son of Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, went up and took Ptolemaeus, for the people had received him, by means whereof he reigned there. Now when King Demetrius heard thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host, and went forth against him to fight. Moreover, Demetrius sent letters unto Jonathan with loving words, so as he magnified him. For said he, let us first make peace with him, before he join with Alexander against us. Else he will remember all the evils that we have done against him, and against his brethren and his people. Wherefore he gave him authority to gather together in hosts, and to provide weapons, that he might aid him in battle. He commanded also that the hostages that were in the tower should be delivered him. Then came Jonathan to Jerusalem, and read the letters in the audience of all the people, and of them that were in the tower, who were so afraid, when they heard that the king had given him authority to gather together in hosts. Whereupon they of the tower delivered their hostages unto Jonathan, and he delivered them unto their parents. This done, Jonathan settled himself in Jerusalem, and began to build and repair the city. And he commanded the workmen to build the walls and the Mount Sion round with square stones for fortification, and they did so. Then the strangers that were in the fortress with Bacchides had built fled away, insomuch as every man left his place and went into his own country. Only at Bethsura certain of those that had forsaken the law and the commandments remained still, for it was their place of refuge. Now when King Alexander had heard what promises Demetrius had sent unto Jonathan, when also it was told him of the battles and noble acts which he and his brethren had done, and of the pains that they had endured, he said, shall we find such another man? Now therefore we will make him our friend and confederate. Upon this he wrote a letter, and sent it unto him according to these words, saying, King Alexander, to his brother Jonathan sending greeting. We have heard of thee, that thou art a man of great power, and meet to be our friend. Wherefore, now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation, and to be called the king's friend. And therewithal he sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold, and require thee to take our part, and keep friendship with us. So in the 7th month of the 160th year, at the feast of the tabernacles, Jonathan put on the holy robe, and gathered together forces, and provided much armor. Whereof, when Demetrius heard, he was very sorry, and said, what have we done, that Alexander hath prevented us in making amity with the Jews to strengthen himself? I also will write unto them words of encouragement, and promise them dignities and gifts, that I may have their aid. He sent unto them therefore to this effect, King Demetrius unto the people of the Jews sendeth greeting. Whereas, verse 26, whereas ye have kept covenants with us, and continued in our friendship, not joining yourselves with our enemies, we have heard hereof, and are glad. Wherefore now continue ye still to be faithful unto us, and we will well recompense you for the things ye do in our behalf, and will grant you many immunities, and give you rewards. And now do I free you, and for your sake I release all the Jews from tributes, and from the customs of salt, and from crown taxes, and from that which appertaineth unto me to receive for the third part of the seed, and the half of the fruit of the trees. I release it from this day forth, so that they shall not be taken of the land of Judea, nor of the 3 governments which are added thereunto out of the country of Samaria and Galilee, from this day forth forevermore. Let Jerusalem also be holy and free, with the borders thereof, both from tenths and tributes. And as for the tower which is at Jerusalem, I yielded up my authority over it, and give it to the high priest, that he may set in it such men as he shall choose to keep it. Moreover, I freely set at liberty every one of the Jews that were carried captives out of the land of Judea into any part of my kingdom. And I will that all my officers remit the tributes, even of their cattle. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and new moons and solemn days, and the 3 days before the feast, and the 3 days after the feast, shall be all days of immunity and freedom, for all the Jews in my realm. Also, no man shall have authority to meddle with them, or to molest any of them in any matter. I will further that there be enrolled among the king's forces about 30,000 men of the Jews, unto whom pay shall be given as belongeth to all the king's forces. And of them some shall be placed in the king's strongholds, of whom also some shall be set over the affairs of the kingdom, which are of trust. And I will that their overseers and governors be of themselves, and that they live after their own laws, even as the king hath commanded in the land of Judea. And concerning the 3 governments that are added to Judea, from the country of Samaria, let them be joined with Judea, that they may be reckoned to be under one, nor bound to obey other authority than the high priests. As for Ptolemaeus and the land pertaining thereunto, I give it as a free gift to the sanctuary at Jerusalem for the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. Moreover, I give every year 15,000 shekels of silver out of the king's accounts from the places appertaining, and all the overplus which the officers paid not in as in former time, from henceforth shall be given toward the works of the temple. And beside this, the 5,000 shekels of silver, which they took from the uses of the temple out of accounts year by year, even those things shall be released, because they appertain to the priests that minister. And whosoever they be that flee unto the temple at Jerusalem, or be within the liberties thereof, being indebted unto the king, or for any other matter, let them be at liberty, and all that they have in my realm. For the building also and repairing of the works of the sanctuary, expenses shall be given of the king's accounts. Yea, and for the building of the walls of Jerusalem, and for the fortifying thereof round about, expenses shall be given out of the king's accounts, as also for the building of the walls in Judea. Now when Jonathan and the people heard these words, they gave no credit unto them, nor received them, because they remembered the great evil that he had done in Israel, for he had afflicted them very sore. But with Alexander they were well pleased, because he was the first that entreated of true peace with them, and they were confederate with him always. Then gathered King Alexander great forces, and camped over against Demetrius. And after the 2 kings had joined battle, Demetrius' host fled, but Alexander followed after him and prevailed against them. And he continued the battle very sore until the sun went down, and that day was Demetrius slain. Afterward, Alexander sent ambassadors, Ptolemy king of Egypt, with a message to this effect: For as much as I am come again to my realm, I am set in the throne of my progenitors, and have gotten the dominion and overthrown Demetrius, and recovered our country. Verse 53, for after I had joined battle with him, both he and his host was discomfited by us, so that we sit in the throne of his kingdom. Now therefore, let us make a league of amity together, and give me now thy daughter to wife, and I will be thy son-in-law, and will give both thee and her gifts according to thy dignity. Then Ptolemy the king gave answer, saying, Happy be the day wherein thou didst return into the land of thy fathers, and settest in the throne of their kingdom. And now will I do to thee as thou hast written. Meet me therefore at Ptolemais, that we may see one another, for I will marry my daughter to thee according to thy desire. So Ptolemy went out of Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra, and they came unto Ptolemais in the 162nd year, where King Alexander, meeting him, gave unto him his daughter Cleopatra, and celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais with great glory, as the manner of kings is. Now King Alexander had written unto Jonathan that he should come and meet him, who thereupon went honorably to Ptolemais, where he met the 2 kings, and gave them and their friends silver and gold, and many presents, and found favor in their sight. At that time, certain pestilent fellows of Israel, men of a wicked life, assembled themselves against him to accuse him, but the king would not hear them. Yea, more than that, the king commanded to take off his garments and clothe him in purple, and they did so. Also, he made him sit by himself and said unto his princes, Go with him into the midst of the city, and make proclamation that no man complain against him of any matter, and that no man trouble him for any manner of cause. Verse 64. Now when his accusers saw that he was honored according to the proclamation and clothed in purple, they fled all away. So the king honored him and wrote him among his chief friends and made him a duke, a partaker of his dominion. Afterward, Jonathan returned to Jerusalem with peace and gladness. Furthermore, in the 165th year came Demetrius, son of Demetrius, out of Crete into the land of his fathers. Whereof, when King Alexander heard tell, he was right sorry and returned into Antioch. Then Demetrius made Apollonius the governor of Syria, his general, who gathered together a great host, encamped in Jamnia, and sent unto Jonathan the high priest, saying, Thou alone liftest up thyself against us, and I am laughed to scorn for thy sake, and reproached. And why dost thou vaunt thy power against us in the mountains? Now therefore, if thou trustest in thine own strength, come down to us into the plain field, and there let us try the matter together. For with me is the power of the cities. Ask and learn who I am, and the rest that take our part. And they shall tell thee that thy foot is not able to stand before our face, for thy fathers have been twice put to flight in their own land. Wherefore, now thou shalt not be able to abide the horsemen in so great a power in the plain, where is neither stone nor flint, nor place to flee unto. So when Jonathan heard these words of Apollonius, he was moved in his mind, and choosing 10,000 men, he went out of Jerusalem, where Simon his brother met him for to help him. And he pitched his tents against Jop, but they of Jop shut him out of the city, because Apollonius had a garrison there. Then Jonathan laid siege unto it, whereupon they of the city let him in for fear. And so Jonathan won Jop. Whereof, when Apollonius heard, he took 3,000 horsemen with a great host of footmen, and went to Azotus as one that journeyed, and therewithal drew him forth into the plain, because he had a great number of horsemen, in whom he put his trust. Then Jonathan followed after him to Azotus, where the armies joined battle. Now Apollonius had left 1,000 horsemen in ambush, and Jonathan knew that there was an ambushment behind him, for they had compassed in his host, and cast darts at the people from morning till evening. But the people stood still, as Jonathan had commanded them, and so the enemy's horses were tired. Then brought Simon forth his host, and set them against the footmen, for the horsemen were spent, who were discomfited by him, and fled. The horsemen also, being scattered in the field, fled to Azotus, and went to Beth Dagon, their idol's temple, for safety. But Jonathan set fire on Azotus and the cities round about it, and took their spoils, and the temple of Dagon, with them that were fled into it, he burned with fire. Thus there were burned and slain with the sword well nigh 8,000 men. Verse 86. And from thence Jonathan removed his host and camped against Ascalon, where the men of the city came forth and met him with great pomp. After this returned Jonathan and his host unto Jerusalem, having many spoils. Now when King Alexander heard these things, he honored Jonathan yet more, and sent him a buckle of gold, as the use is to be given to such as are of the king's blood. He gave him also Acheron with the borders thereof in possession. Chapter 11. And the king of Egypt gathered together a great host, like the sand that lieth upon the seashore, and many ships, and went about through deceit to get Alexander's kingdom and join it unto his own. Whereupon he took his journey into Syria in peaceable manner, so as they of the cities opened unto him and met him. For King Alexander had commanded them so to do, because he was his father-in-law. Now as Ptolemy entered into the cities, he set in every one of them a garrison of soldiers to keep it. And when he had came near to Azotus, they showed him the temple of Dagon that was burnt, and Azotus and the suburbs thereof that were destroyed, and the bodies that were cast abroad, and them that he had burnt in the battle. For they had made heaps of them by the way where he should pass. Also they told the king whatsoever Jonathan had done, to the intent he might blame him. But the king held his peace. When Jonathan met the king with great pomp at Jop, where they saluted one another and lodged, afterward Jonathan, when he had gone with the king to the river called Eleutherus, returned again to Jerusalem. King Ptolemy, therefore, having gotten the dominion of the cities by the sea unto Seleucia upon the seacoast, imagined wicked counsels against Alexander. Whereupon he sent ambassadors unto King Demetrius, saying, Come, let us make a league betwixt us, and I will give thee my daughter whom Alexander hath, and thou shalt reign in thy father's kingdom. For I repent that I gave my daughter unto him, for he sought to slay me. Thus did he slander him, because he was desirous of his kingdom. Wherefore he took his daughter from him and gave her to Demetrius, and forsook Alexander, so that their hatred was openly known. Then Ptolemy entered into Antioch, where he set 2 crowns upon his head, the crown of Asia and of Egypt. In the mean season was King Alexander in Cilicia, because those that dwelt in those parts had revolted from him. But when Alexander heard of this, he came to war against him. Whereupon King Ptolemy brought forth his host, and met him with a mighty power, and put him to flight. Verse 16. So Alexander fled into Arabia, there to be defended, but King Ptolemy was exalted. For Zabdiel the Arabian took off Alexander's head and sent it unto Ptolemy. King Ptolemy also died the 3rd day after, and they that were in the strongholds were slain one of another. By this means Demetrius reigned in the 167th year. And at that time Jonathan gathered together them that were in Judea to take the tower that was in Jerusalem, and he made many engines of war against it. Then certain ungodly persons who hated their own people went unto the king and told him that Jonathan besieged the tower, whereof when he heard, he was angry, and immediately removing, he came to Ptolemaeus and wrote unto Jonathan that he should not lay siege to the tower, but come and speak with him at Ptolemaeus in great haste. Nevertheless, Jonathan, when he heard this, commanded to besiege it still. And he chose certain of the elders of Israel and the priests, and put himself in peril, and took silver and gold and raiment and divers presents besides, and went to Ptolemaeus unto the king, where he found favor in his sight. And though certain ungodly men of the people had made complaints against him, yet the king entreated him as his predecessors had done before, and prompted him in the sight of all his friends, and confirmed him in the high priesthood, and in all the honors that he had before, verse 27, and confirmed him in the high priesthood, and in all the honors that he had before, and gave him preeminence among the chief friends. Then Jonathan desired the king that he would make Judea flee from tribute, as also the 3 governments with the country of Samaria, and he promised him 300 talents. So the king consented and wrote letters unto Jonathan of all these things after this manner. King Demetrius unto his brother Jonathan, and unto the nation of the Jews sendeth greeting. We send you here a copy of the letter which we did write unto our cousin, lasso things concerning you, that ye might see it, King Demetrius unto his father, Lassothene sendeth greeting. We are determined to do good to the people of the Jews, who are our friends, and keep covenants with us, because of their good will towards us. Wherefore, we have ratified unto them the borders of Judea, with the 3 governments of Ephraim and Lydda and Ramathaim, that are added unto Judea from the country of Samaria, and all things appertaining unto them. For all such as do sacrifice in Jerusalem, instead of the payments which the king received of them yearly aforetime out of the fruits of the earth and of the trees. And as for other things that belong unto us, of the tithes and customs pertaining unto us, as also the salt pits and the crown taxes which are due unto us, we discharge them of them all for their relief. And nothing hereof shall be revoked from this time forth forever. Now therefore, see that thou make a copy of these things, and let it be delivered unto Jonathan, and set upon the holy mount a conspicuous place. After this, when King Demetrius saw that the land was quiet before him, and that no resistance was made against him, he sent away all his forces, every one to his own place, except certain bands of strangers, whom he had gathered from the isles of the heathen. Wherefore all the forces of his fathers hated him. Moreover, there was one, Tryphon, that had been of Alexander's part afore, who, seeing that all the host murmured against Demetrius, went to Symmachus the Arabian, that brought up Antiochus, the young son of Alexander, and lay sore upon him to deliver him this young Antiochus, that he might reign in his father's stead. He told him therefore all that Demetrius had done, and how his men of war were at enmity with him. And there he remained a long season. In the meantime, Jonathan sent unto King Demetrius that he would cast those of the tower out of Jerusalem, and those also in the fortress, for they fought against Israel. So Demetrius sent unto Jonathan, saying, I will not only do this for thee and thy people, but I will greatly honor thee and thy nation, if opportunity serve. Now therefore thou shalt do well if thou send me men to help me, for all my forces are gone from me. Upon this, Jonathan sent him 3,000 strong men unto Antioch. And when they came to the king was very glad of their coming. Verse 45, howbeit, they that were of the city gathered themselves together into the midst of the city, to the number of the 120,000 men, and would have slain the king. Wherefore the king fled into the court, but they of the city kept the passages of the city and began to fight. Then the king called to the Jews for help, who came unto him all at once, and dispersing themselves through the city, slew that day in the city to the number of 100,000. Also they set fire on the city, and got many spoils that day, and delivered the king. So when they of the city saw that the Jews had got the city as they would, their courage was abated. Wherefore they made supplication to the king, and cried, saying, Grant us peace, and let the Jews cease from assaulting us and the city. With that they cast away their weapons and made peace. And the Jews were honored in the sight of the king, and in the sight of all that were in his realm. And they returned to Jerusalem, having great spoils. So King Demetrius sat on the throne of his kingdom, and the land was quiet before him. Nevertheless, he dissembled in all that ever he spake, and estranged himself from Jonathan, neither rewarding he him according to the benefits which he had received of him, but troubled him very sore. After this returned Tryphon, and with him the young child Antiochus, who reigned and was crowned. Then there gathered unto him all the men of war, whom Demetrius had put away, and they fought against Demetrius, who turned his back and fled. Moreover, Tryphon took the elephants and won Antioch. And that time young Antiochus rode unto wrote unto Jonathan, saying, I confirm thee in the high priesthood, and appoint thee ruler over the four governments, and to be one of the king's friends. Verse 58, upon this he sent him golden vessels to be served in, and gave him leave to drink in gold, and to be clothed in purple, and to wear a golden buckle. His brother Simon also he made captain from the place called the ladder of Tyrus unto the borders of Egypt. Verse 60, then Jonathan went forth and passed through the cities beyond the river, and all the forces of Syria gathered themselves unto him for to help him. And when he had came to Ascalon, they of the city met him honorably, from whence he went to Gaza. But they of Gaza shut him out, wherefore he laid siege unto it, and burned the suburbs thereof with fire, and spoiled them. Afterward, when they of Gaza made supplication unto Jonathan, he made peace with them, and took the sons of their chief men, their hostages, and sent them to Jerusalem, and passed through the country unto Damascus. Now when Jonathan heard that Demetrius' princes were come to Cades, which is in Galilee, with a great power, purposing to remove him out of the country, he went to meet them, and left Simon his brother in the country. Then Simon encamped against Bethsura, and fought against it a long season, and shut it up. But they desired to have peace with him, which he granted them, and then put them out from thence, and took the city, and set a garrison in it. As for Jonathan and his hosts, they pitched at the water of Gennesar, from whence betimes in the morning they gat them to the plain of Nasor. And behold, the host of strangers met them in the plain, who having laid men in ambush for him in the mountains, came themselves over against him. So when they that lay in ambush rose out of their places, and joined battle, all that were of Jonathan's side fled, insomuch as there was not one of them left, except Mattathias the son of Absalom, and Judas the son of Chalphi, the captains of the hosts. Then Jonathan rent his clothes, and cast earth upon his head, and prayed. Afterwards, turning again to battle, he put them to flight, and so they ran away. Verse 73. Now when his own men that were fled saw this, they turned again unto him, and with him pursued them to Cades, even unto their own tents, and there they camped. So there were slain of the heathen that day about 3,000 men, but Jonathan returned to Jerusalem. All right, so that was the book of First Maccabees. We read chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right, so we'll pick up tomorrow at chapter 12 in the book of First Maccabees. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share all of our videos. All right, online across all platforms. All right, make sure you donate as well. If you go to YouTube, you type in IUIC with your city. Your local school, a local IUIC school should pop up near you. All right, and you can subscribe and support that local channel as well. All right, Shalom family, Most High in Christ bless.